every story you love about the White Wolf, about Yennefer, about Ciri, begins with a lie. The lie that this world was always this way, that monsters have always walked it, that witches have always hunted them, that the dead rose in swamps, that elves hid in forests, that vampires stalked the night, because that's simply how the world is. It isn't. Once, this world was silent, before the curses that turn princesses into strigas, before the leshens that stalk the ancient woods, before the ghouls crawling through graveyards. Just a quiet world, with the elder races alone, under a quiet sun. And then, one night, the sky broke. Two worlds that were never meant to touch crashed into each other, and every horror, every curse, every screaming thing that Geralt of Rivia would one day be paid to kill fell through the wound. This is the night the world became the world. This is the conjunction of the spheres, and nothing has been the same since. Over the coming chapters, we are going to walk through the complete story of The Witcher, Geralt, Yennefer, Ciri, the Wild Hunt, all of it. But before we can understand any of them, we need to understand the universe that made them necessary, because every witcher who has ever drawn a silver blade, every monster that has ever earned that blade, every curse, every prophecy, every magical bloodline, all of it traces back to one moment, one cataclysm 1500 years ago. In this first episode, we are going back to that night. This is the origin of the world itself. The continent is old, older than the kingdoms that carve it up, older than the empires that fight over it, older than humanity itself, and most of the people living on it have no idea what actually happened here. They tell stories, of course, stories about gods, stories about heroes, stories passed down from grandmothers, but the truth, the real truth of how their world became this cursed, beautiful, bleeding place was almost completely forgotten, because humanity wasn't here when it happened. The beings who witnessed the end of the old world, who watched the sky tear apart, who saw what crawled through the wound, weren't human at all. They were the elder races, the gnomes, the dwarves, and above all, the elves. And of all of them, it was the elves who remembered most fiercely. The dwarves carved their grief into stone. The gnomes whispered it into roots and herbs. But the elves carried it in their songs, in their towers, in every word of a language so old that even their own descendants would one day forget most of it. By the time humans arrived, the elder races had already been shattered by what they saw. They had retreated, they had grown silent, they had stopped telling the story to anyone who wasn't one of them. So humanity inherited a world full of monsters, and never learned where the monsters came from. They simply woke up in a world where things hunted them in the dark and assumed that was normal. It wasn't. But to understand what was broken, we first have to understand what was whole. Imagine the continent 1500 years before Geralt ever drew breath. The forests are the same forests. The rivers cut the same paths. The mountains tear the same skies. But the world is empty. No ghouls crawling through graveyards. No graveyers stalking battlefields. No bruxae walking out of the mist. No vampires hunting in the night. The night is just night. The forest is just forest. And the elder races, the gnomes, the oldest of them all, shape the deep places of the earth. The dwarves, carve their cities into the bones of the mountains, into Mahakam, into halls so deep that no human will ever see their bottom. And the elves build towers that shimmer like glass, cities of impossible beauty, songs in a language so ancient that even now, 1500 years later, their own children have forgotten most of it. They are not gentle, they are not kind, but this world is theirs. It has been theirs for as long as memory reaches, until one night, everything changes. Reality is not one world. In the cosmology of The Witcher, reality is countless worlds, countless spheres, each one its own universe, each one sealed away from the others, each one governed by its own laws of magic, its own gods, its own horrors. Normally, they do not touch. They spin past each other, silent, separate, safe. But once in a very long while, the barriers between them thin, and sometimes they break. One night, the sky opened, worlds collided, reality tore open like cloth, and for a single, screaming moment, every world that had ever existed, every plane that had ever been sealed, bled into every other. The elder races looked up and saw things that should not exist. Creatures that belonged to other universes, beings with no bodies, souls without forms, shapes that violated the geometry of the world itself. For a few hours, every sphere in the cosmos was open at once. Monsters poured out, magic poured in, and the universe, as the elder races had always known it, ended when the sky finally sealed itself again, when the wound closed, when the stars fell back into place. The world they woke up to was not the world they had gone to sleep in. And this is where the nightmare truly began. The conjunction didn't just break reality, it left things behind. Every creature that had crossed over in that one screaming moment was trapped, stranded on a world that wasn't theirs, under a sun that wasn't theirs, in a body that barely fit the laws of this universe. And they were hungry. The ghouls came first, crawling out of the rift, grey, starving things that fed on the dead, and, when the dead weren't enough, on the living. The Gravers crawled out of the burial grounds, larger, hungrier, stalking battlefields that the dying world kept providing. The Bruxy walked out of the mist, women-shaped, beautiful, even, from a distance, up close, something else entirely. The basilisks nested in caves. The wraiths found places where the air itself remembered death. The vampires, the true vampires, walked out of the rift as if they owned the world, because in their own sphere, they had. And there was something else, something the continent had never contained in such measure. The elder races had always known magic. The elves wove it into their songs. The gnomes shaped it into their craft. But it was a rare and quiet thing, something whispered, not shouted, a power the world barely tolerated. But when the spheres collided, raw chaos poured through the wound. Magic became abundant, violent, everywhere. The very air of the world changed. The elder races who survived that night knew immediately what had happened. They knew they were now living on a haunted world, but they also knew something worse. They knew there was more coming. The elder races lost everything that night, not all at once, slowly. The gnomes withdrew deeper into their hidden places. The dwarves sealed themselves into Mahakam, into the mountains, into the deep stone. But the elves The elves had built their lives in the open world, in cities of light, in forests of song, on rivers and plains where the new horrors now walked freely. They had the most to lose, and for a while, they survived. They learned to live with the new horrors. They drove the worst of them back from their cities. They adapted to a world that was no longer entirely theirs. For 1,000 years after the conjunction, the elves held on. Their forests still stood, their towers still shimmered, their songs still rose into the indigo sky. And then, something else arrived. Not through the sky this time. Across the sea, ships, wooden ships, full of small, short-lived, violent creatures who had never seen magic and didn't care that it existed. Humans. And the elves made a fatal mistake. They underestimated them. They saw the new arrivals as primitive, loud, beneath their notice. They refused to wage war over a few burning villages. They retreated. They fled east, and they kept fleeing, as one elven city after another burned to the ground behind them. Vizima, Novigrad, the great cities of the human kingdoms today, were built on elven graves. And by the time the elves understood what was happening, it was already too late. If stories like this are what you are here for, the ones that go back to the moment before the story begins, you know what to do. Because we have centuries of this story to tell, and it only gets darker from here. Humans did not arrive in peace. They came in waves, centuries after the conjunction had already cracked the world. The elves claim some of them slipped through the rift itself, refugees from another dying world. But the ones who came to conquer came later, by ship, by the thousands, and whatever brought them here, they did not come to share. They burned the forests the elves had lived in for thousands of years. They built kingdoms on the ruins of elven cities. They named the mountains after their own kings, and forgot the names the elder races had given them. And they did not learn the truth. They inherited a world full of monsters. And they were told the monsters had always been here, that the Striga rose because of a curse, that the Leshen were spirits of the wood, that the vampires were demons of the night. Nobody told them about the sky breaking open. Nobody told them about the rift. Nobody told them that the horrors in the forests were not from here, because the only people who remembered hated them. And this is the world that humanity inherited, a world where the night is never really empty, where the forests have eyes that are not animal eyes, where the dead sometimes don't stay dead, where a traveler who stops at the wrong inn in the wrong village never reaches the next one. The kingdoms grew, the farms spread, the cities rose, but the monsters never left. They couldn't leave. The rift had closed 1,500 years ago. There was nowhere for them to go. And so they did what every stranded species does. They adapted, they bred, they spread. They learned how to hide from humans during the day and feed on them at night. A new kind of world. A world where the people on top of the food chain were not the ones with the biggest armies. They were the ones with the teeth. And eventually, somebody realized that something had to be done about it. Because humans could not fight what came through the rift. Not with swords, not with armies, not with faith. To hunt a creature from another sphere, you had to become something that wasn't entirely human anymore. You had to drink poison and survive. You had to let alchemy rewrite your blood. You had to walk into a ritual so cruel that most children who entered never walked back out. You had to become a witcher. And the first of them were made in the oldest laboratories on the continent, places long since lost to history. What survived of their craft, the grasses, the recipes, the rituals so cruel that most children who entered them never walked back out, eventually found its way to a fortress called Kaer Morhen, by men who believed they were saving the world, and by children who had no choice at all. And that is a story for the next chapter. But here's what I want to know. If you had lived through the conjunction, if you had watched the sky tear open and seen what crawled through, would you have fought to close it again? Or would you have let the world burn and started a new one? Tell me below. In the next chapter, we walk into Kaer Morhen. We meet the boys who were chosen. We watch the trial of the grasses begin, and we find out what a witcher actually is. That story is coming soon.